السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن نبينا وحبيبنا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله. نشهد بأنه قد بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وجعلها على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد، يذكرنا الله سبحانه وتعالى في محكم تنزيله بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد. All praises and thanks are owed and due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one and only true God. And we bear witness that indeed no other deity was worthy of worship but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam is the last of all prophets and messengers sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to all of mankind, with the message of peace and justice and humanity, human brotherhood and sisterhood, with the message of equality, with the message of peace, the message of compassion and mercy. Indeed, that is the message of Islam, the message of monotheism, of Tawheed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower His blessings and peace upon His messenger Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, and all the prophets before him, and their families, and their companions, and all their followers. And may Allah, the Almighty, accept us among those followers. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What I would like to remind myself and my dear brothers and sisters is about changing our perspective on things, on an issue that has impacted how our community behaves and acts, or sometimes lacks of acting. It is not unusual for us when we get together in our events and gatherings, when we think on our own, to realize the weakness in which we are living in today. Our state of affairs is one that does not please a Muslim or anyone who cares about justice these days. We see, especially as Americans, we see and feel that our voices, our issues, our concerns are never addressed and considered by our government. We always wonder, how come when it's so clear that there is so much injustice in Palestine, yet our government continues to unconditionally almost support Israel, send 3 billion, 5 billion every year. When it's so clear that the Palestinians are oppressed, we wonder, could our government be blind to what is happening? Could they not be reading what we're reading? We ask the same question when it happens in Syria or Burma, in Myanmar. We say, how could the world watch how a whole people in Syria being slaughtered every day, 70,000 being killed or have died already, murdered by the Assad regime, hundreds of thousands wounded, detained and tortured, millions displaced and refugees. And it is so obvious. You and I see it. Any fair-minded human being notices that this is injustice. And you wonder, why is our government still debating until today whether the Syrian people have the right to defend themselves or not? Other than the talk that Syrians deserve freedom, but nothing on the ground to make that materialized. Or in Burma, where many of you probably are familiar with, people are taken from their homes, their hands are tied up, and sprayed with gasoline and then lit on fire and then videotape as the process is happening. And what is their crime? They're Muslim. That's it. In Burma, that is nothing else. There's no political power. People don't want to see Muslims in Burma. Some extremists, some Buddhist extremists are unhappy to see a Muslim minority there. That's exactly what they're doing. And the whole world is watching when these crimes are happening. And you're wondering, why is it that our government that stands for freedom, for justice, or at least we make those slogans, is not acting? Same thing in many places around the world where there are injustices. Domestically speaking even, when we think about Islamophobia or civil rights violations, how often do we wonder, why is it that if there is a comment that is made about any other community, whether it's the Jewish community, the Catholic community, the Mormon community, the African American community, Latino, any community that gets defamed by a political party, immediately elected officials, political parties come in, compete to issue statements condemning such language and rhetoric, and rightly so, because no one should tolerate such bigotry or hate mongering. But when it comes to Muslims, there is always hesitation. If any, at least maybe sometimes even silence. If Muslims are being defamed, if Islam is being defamed, there's almost silence except for a few who dare to address the injustice against Muslims. Imagine if a state today passes a law. Imagine if the state of Oklahoma decides to pass a bill today that says this will restrict the Jewish community from practicing its religious, its faith. Imagine if they decide to pass a law and say this will restrict the Catholic community as it practices its faith. How many other states will condemn that? The White House would be issuing a statement. The State Department, although it has nothing to do, just to show that they're standing against anti-Semitism or anti-bigotry and so on. The Homeland Security, you name it, Justice Department, every government agency, every politician will compete. And again, rightly so. But when 78 laws, anti-Sharia as they call them, anti-Sharia bills are passed in about 31 states in America, the complaints are few and less vocal and less loud than they should be. So the question is, or when we talk about civil rights very briefly, I think it takes no secret, all of us know the amount of abuse that this community faces by various government agencies, law enforcement agencies, from the federal level, such as FBI, TSA, and all other DHS agencies, CBP, at the border, at the airport, at our mosques, in ways that would not be tolerated for any other community. Imagine if we hear the news today that the FBI is sending agent provocateurs, entrappers, into synagogues to entrap young Jewish boys, men or women, into committing illegal activities. Or imagine if we hear that the FBI is paying crooks and criminals money to go into Mormon churches to entrap or incite young Mormons to commit something illegal. There will be an outrage in the country, and rightly so. But it's normal, or we hear it normally when it comes to Muslims. They send them to our mosques and try to entrap young Muslims and push them into committing illegal activities in order to manufacture crimes and then praise themselves about preventing such manufactured crimes. The question again is, why is this happening with us and not with others? Is it something that has to do with us? Are we a community that lacks prominence, lacks education? Are we a community that's not intelligent, not educated? Well, the truth is not. According to studies, demographic studies, the American Muslim community is one of the most affluent, wealthy communities in America. Our level of income is much higher than the average income in America. Our level of education is one of the highest in the country. MashaAllah, everybody has graduate degrees, masters, PhDs. Everybody has, MashaAllah, a college degree. Everybody is educated. One of the most entrepreneurial communities, businesses, income, education. One of the most diverse communities. So nobody can stereotype us in one way or the other. We're diverse in ethnicities. We're diverse in age. diverse in geography, wherever we're present. So we have all the elements of being a very influential community, but yet we're one of the least influential communities in America. One of the most marginalized communities in America. So there must be something else other than resources. What are those things? Why is it that if any other community is subjected to a fraction of what we are subjected, what we're subjected to, they get the response in their defense and we don't? There must be something. And my argument is the lack of engagement in this community. The lack of engagement with the rest of the larger community, basically. Others don't know us. Others have defined who we are without us countering or accepting or having a say into that. We have not engaged in society at large, but specifically politically. Because that's what makes a difference. That's where it makes a difference in terms of laws. Passing laws, countering laws, challenging the institutional racism that happens against sometimes, or institutional bigotry against Muslims and their right to free worship. Whether it's the opposition against our mosques, or the passing of laws that permit law enforcement to abuse, or the lack of laws that protect us from that abuse, or the passing of anti-Muslim laws, as they call them, anti-Sharia laws. To give you an example of that from reality. And of course, when you ask Muslims, why is this happening? Some Muslims have no clue. And I'm not worried about those because we have to worry about them in a different way. Some Muslims don't care about what is happening. All they care about is as long as they live their life, spend the money, go on vacation, make money. If I'm okay, everything is okay. If the whole world is mistreated, who cares? Unfortunately, this is not an acceptable attitude. من لم يهتم بأمر المسلمين فليس منهم. And another hadith, مثل المؤمنين في توادهم وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم كمثل الجسد الواحد إذا اشتكى منه عضو تداعى له سائر الجسد بالسهر والحمى. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever does not concern himself or herself with the affairs and the concerns of fellow Muslims, then he or she does not belong to them. You have to care. If someone is hungry, someone is in pain, someone is abused, it is your abuse. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, the example of the believers in their love, compassion, mercy to one another is like the example of one body. And you all know the hadith. So there is no excuse not to care. Sometimes we care, but we complain. We like to complain because that's the easiest route. Instead of trying to change, what do? We curse the darkness rather than light a candle. Because that's the easiest thing. That's the safest thing. Because then if somebody asks, what have you done? I said, alhamdulillah, I've complained. I came to the masjid and I told them, Akhi, the masjid stinks. Alhamdulillah, and I went back home. Did you donate so they can clean it? No, I give them the advice, mashallah. You think they don't know their flaws? Do you think we don't know our flaws? When people come and say the Muslim community is weak. Ya akhi, the Muslim community's voice in politics is so weak. You guys at CARE should do something about that. You guys at Impact should do something about that. As if we don't know. Thank you, genius. Of course we know that. And that's not going to change unless you are part of that change. And one thing that I always tell people, what I learned is people who complain the most are people who do the least. Check that. Check this out. When you notice someone complaining, look at what have they done. And the more they complain, the less they've done. Because they don't want to do anything. They think that complaining is doing. And at best what they do, they complain. You know, their extent of activism is something done online. You know, they send a couple of comments on Facebook. Alhamdulillah, I've done it. You know, I sent an email about the misery of people in Syria. May Allah forgive all the people. Where is the world? Why are you silent about Syria? Okay, alhamdulillah, let's go bowling now. What have you done? Alhamdulillah, I educated everybody. I'm glad you did that, brother. Good. What else? Oh, mashallah. Look, watch this video about Burma. People are being killed in Burma. All right, let's go for dinner tonight. I'm not saying don't go for dinner, but I'm saying take the next level. You've educated yourself. You've educated somebody else. There's more into advocacy and into change. What is the next step for change? Connecting. How can I make change? How can I send a donation to a relief organization that will help these people? How can I participate in an action day calling members of Congress to help educate, help change? Whether it's a domestic or foreign issues, the world is a global village now, so there's no separation. Whether it's an oppression happening in Kashmir, in Afghanistan, whether it's the drones sending their missiles on Pakistan or Afghanistan or Yemen, or whether it's people who can't find food or health care in America. It's injustice. And as a Muslim, should care about that injustice and turn it around and challenge it. So we see in our community the different level of reacting. That the extent of dealing with the weaknesses and the challenges is that way. How are other communities doing that? Here's how other communities do it. About a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I was in DC, in Washington, DC, as part of a group of care people, care executive directors from all the care chapters, all the 35 care chapters, doing what we call Lobby Day, or Muslim Day on the Hill. So we take these representatives, about 55, 60 of us, to go on lobby on issues that are important to us and community at large. Immigration reform, anti-bullying measures and laws, ending the injustices at the border and while flying while Muslim, as they say. And we meet with members of Congress. We had a chance to meet with about 170, which is the largest number we've had, because we do this every year. 170 members of Congress or their offices out of 535. So still barely, less than a third almost, close to a third. 170 out of 535, 435 members of Congress, House, and 100 US senators. Now you think, alhamdulillah, that's a great achievement, but I'll tell you what I heard from members of Congress. And I had a chance to meet almost with a dozen of them, personally from Southern California. All of them said, I might not agree with everything you said. I spoke to them about Islamophobia, about Syria, about Palestine, about Burma, about the US drones. I spoke to them about shutting down Guantanamo Bay, and so on. Some agreed on everything I said. Some agreed with half of what I said. Some agreed with 10% of what I said. But the point is engaging them and letting them know that I represent hundreds of thousands of Muslims in America who feel that way, and probably millions of other fellow Americans who feel that way. And let them hear that. And their argument was, where are the Muslims? If you say there are so many Muslims in my district, how come I don't see them? How come they never come to my office? How come I've never received? Wallahi, one person told me, you're telling me about all this bloodshed in Syria? I didn't receive one single phone call from anybody in my district, and I know that district has tons of Syrian Americans and American Muslims. He said, not even one call to my office telling me how to vote. How do you want me to take a stand? When you tell me about Islamophobia, I don't hear much from the Muslim community. Maybe once a year you guys come in and show up to my office here or in my district. So their argument is, and I'm not saying by getting engaged automatically you get the results. This is the first step. But the first step is to take that step. The first step of opening the door is getting off our seat. You know, we're sitting on the chair and we think the door will open. Open, open. Inshallah, open. I'll make stronger dua. Open. It's not going to open. You know that. It's only going to open when I stand up and get to the door and turn the knob and open the door. And the first step is standing up, is being there, engaging. That is needed. So let's compare how other communities do it. Other communities. When I was in DC, wallahi, I share with you, and this is what I see every year, so there's really nothing genius about what I'm telling you. What I see, what I saw on that day, on my first day on the Hill in DC, I saw hundreds and hundreds of young kids, mostly from private Jewish schools, and there were many from private Christian schools. But I had a chance to speak with the person who was part of the Jewish private schools. And I asked him, what is happening? He said, well, we do this on a seasonal basis. We get private schools from the Jewish community. Around this time, it was a lot of the East Coast people. He said other time would be Midwest, others would be West Coast, and so on. Different schools because they have different denominations. These were the more religious ones, I think, the conservative ones. He said, we go there, we take these youth, we train them, and we go and meet with members of Congress. So we can lobby and advocate on issues that are important to the Jewish community. And by the way, the Jewish community is not more monolithic than the Muslim community, by the way. So when you say the Jewish community, it could be different things, the way we are. It could be social issues, it could be political issues, it could be hardcore pro-Israel, it could be middle ground pro-Israel, it could be pro-Palestinian. I've seen them all in DC. So the point I'm picking on that community is because it's similar to our size. It's about, they're 5.5 million. We're anywhere from 5 to 6 million. We're both religious minorities. And look where they were. I took a break to wait in the cafeteria, and I saw, wallahi, I saw hundreds of women coming in, all holding a sign, a badge that's a name tag that says NCJW. And I asked one of the ladies, said, Which group is that? I said, she showed me the badge. We're the National Council of Jewish Women. There are a couple of hundreds of us lobbying on issues that are important to the group. And we go and meet with members of Congress. Same thing, I was walking around from office to the office. Wallahi, sometimes as I go in, the group coming out is AIPAC. All of us are familiar with AIPAC, one of the right-wing pro-Israel, pro-occupation groups. I also saw J Street people outside, again, walking, which is a little bit more or less more, I guess, pro-peace of the groups. I saw Jewish Voice for Peace. I saw Jewish activists on their own coming with other groups. I saw rabbis walking. And I was thinking, where are our students? Where are our sisters? Where are our imams? And it's not their fault. We as a community take responsibility for not organizing these things. We've been missing in action. I was waiting in line for a hearing. Wallahi, I was chatting with a person about the hearing and why I'm going there and so on. So the guy turns around and says, oh, I'm attending another hearing, but we're waiting in line to go through the door. He said, my name is so-and-so, Pastor so-and-so. I'm from, I think it was Atlanta. He's from Georgia, but wasn't sure about the city. He asked me, what are you doing here? So I explained to him what I do with CARE. He was familiar with CARE. Not very big fan of it, but he was familiar. He said, yeah, I know. You guys are the Muslim people, right? I said, yeah. I said, well, we're afraid of the growth of Muslims. And so, but he was very nice. We had a nice discussion. But I asked him, so what are you doing here? And he said, I'm here as part of about 220, 230 pastors mainly from Georgia and maybe a couple of other cities near state, a state nearby, to meet with our members of Congress. Guess for what? To tell them we're praying for you. I said, that's it, just to tell them we're praying for you. Even when we disagree with you, we want you to know. The point I'm making, my dear brothers and sisters, is if you engage, if you show your presence, you get the attention. Squeaky wheel gets the oil. That's what it is. If you continue to show presence, if you continue to make your point, you continue to build alliances and do it in a rational way when you make your point. And when we're making points that are actually good, not just for us, but for everybody else. When we advocate for fair immigration laws, for fairness in treatment of all people in America, at the workplace, at the border, when they're flying, when we advocate against racial or religious profiling, we're not the only ones benefiting. We benefit, others benefit too. People would acknowledge. You want to fight Islamophobia? Do it by empowering the community. Because what happens when we start empowering our community on those issues? One, the first thing that happens is you get the attention of public officials. So the next time there's an Islamophobic comment, they will respond and say, this is not acceptable. Whether because they love us or because they want our votes. Who cares at this point? The other thing is you empower the community. You don't just wait on and depend on organizations. Everyone in the community is capable of making a difference. Everyone goes and meets with a member of Congress, assembly member, state senator, and demand their rights and push for what is right. Also, what happens, it allows those who are subjected to the misinformation coming from Fox News and others to know that this is not true. When somebody says Muslims are extremists, Muslims are violent, Muslims hate other people, they're going to say that's complete nonsense. I know my Muslim neighbors, they're advocating for money to be given to spend to help the homeless people. I know my Muslim neighbors, they're helping for health care for all. They want to make sure everybody gets access to health care. I know my Muslim neighbors and in my city, they're advocating for peace and justice and tolerance in America. So that would be the best way to defeat Islamophobia. We are the nation of كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. We are the ummah of, you are the best of nations sent, created to be sent to mankind, Allah is saying. Why? Because you enjoin the good and forbid the evil and believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are the ummah of amal, action. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran repeatedly, dozens and dozens of times tells us, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Every time Allah mentions iman, faith to us, He couples that with amal, action, deeds. And we are the ummah that acts the least. We are the ummah that, the community that is doing the least because we're waiting for others to do things on our behalf. Either because we believe in the superpower conspiracy and we think we cannot do any difference, or we're waiting for Superman to come. You know, whoever that Superman might be. He will come in and change the ummah. His name is Salahuddin, whatever the new name of Salahuddin is going to be. We're all waiting. And maybe this is our mistake because we kept stressing on in our teachings of our kids. And we are victims of that. We glorify these great people, and they certainly need to be revered and glorified. But we forgot that they are also a product of their time. They're not super people. They came and they organized people, and they were part of people. So Superman is not going to come on his own. Superman is you, your child, your son, your daughter, your friend, your brother. You are going to be the Superman. And I hope you know I'm talking about figure of speech here. There's no Superman with superpower. You are the one who can make that difference, my dear brothers and sisters. We are to change. You be that change. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah does not change the condition of people until they change themselves. This is the precondition for change. So my urging for you, my dear brothers and sisters, is to be part of that change. Join active organizations. Form your own committees in your community, where you can meet with members of Congress. Let them know your views. Hold fundraisers for the candidates. Let them know that you count and that you are going to support those who uphold values of goodness and justice and fairness, and that you're going to support and vote for those who will oppose those who stand for bigotry and injustice and division and war and warmongering. Let this known. Let this be known. Your views are important to be known, not to be kept. This is not something we put in museums. MashaAllah, here's the value of justice. Here's the value of goodness. Here's the values of fairness. No, these values were never meant to be paraded. These values were meant to be lived, acted upon, and let people see that in our actions. In conclusion, I encourage my dear brothers and sisters, inshallah, one of the upcoming events, and of course I encourage you to be part of all activities that have to do with empowerment. Youth empowerment, adult empowerment, women empowerment, imam empowerment, community empowerment. But there is one such thing happening, inshallah, in a couple of weeks called the Muslim Day at the Capitol. This is a yearly thing that CARE has been doing. Alhamdulillah, this is our second year. It's new for us in California. It has been done for many, many years in other states, where we bring active Muslims, professionals, doctors, students, men, women, young and old, anyone who cares about issues, and all of you care about issues, to go and spend one day on April 30th, it's a Tuesday, in Sacramento, at the Capitol, where we meet with elected officials, state assembly people, and state senators to advocate on issues that are important to us. Freedom of speech on campuses, immigration reforms, fair immigration laws, workers' rights, things that impact everybody, not just us. We have to stop looking at things through our own prism, our own selfish prism. We can serve ourselves, there's nothing wrong with that, but also serve others. So I encourage you, inshallah, after your sunnah prayer, after the prayers, to pick up the information and commit to be there. One day, take a day off. It's a great experience. Let these elected officials know that the 1 million Muslims in California are not marginal people. We're not a number on the side sitting, watching. We're actually an active number that hopefully, inshallah, is part of making a good difference along with others who are making such a difference. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who don't watch as change is happening. To make us among those, not to make us among those who prevent positive change from happening, but inshallah to make us among those who help make change happen, to help initiate positive change to happen. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه فيا فوز المستغفرين. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد عباد الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت على سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد اللهم اقسم لنا من خشيتك ما تحول به بيننا وبين معصيتك ومن طاعتك ما تبلغنا به جنتك ومن اليقين ما تهون به علينا مصائب الدنيا اللهم متعنا بأسماعنا وأبصارنا وقواتنا وذرياتنا أبدا ما أحييتنا واجعله الوارث منا واجعل ثأرنا على من ظلمنا اللهم اجعل ثأرنا على من ظلمنا اللهم اجعل ثأرنا على من ظلمنا اللهم لا تسلط علينا بذنوبنا من لا يخافك فينا ولا يرحمنا اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم لا تدع لنا في مقامنا هذا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا ميتا لنا إلا رحمته ولا مريضا إلا شافيته وعافيته ولا مظلوما إلا نصرته ولا ضالا إلا هديته ولا محتاجا وفقيرا إلا رزقته يا رب العالمين، ولا حاجة لنا من حوائج الدنيا لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا أعنتنا على قضائها يا الله يا مجيب الدعاء. اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان، اللهم ارفع البلاء عن إخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان، يا ناصر المظلومين، يا أرحم الراحمين، يا غافر الذنوب. اللهم انصر إخواننا في سوريا، اللهم انصر إخواننا في سوريا وثبت أقدامهم، اللهم تقبل شهداءهم وعاف مرضاهم وفك قيد أسراهم وأعد لاجئيهم إلى بيوتهم سالمين، اللهم وأعد مفقوديهم إلى بيوتهم. اللهم وانصر إخواننا في فلسطين وفي كشمير وفي باكستان وفي أفغانستان وفي بورما وفي الصومال وفي ماليزيا وفي تايلاند وفي كل مكان يعاني فيه المسلمون، وخاصة في إخواننا في بنغلاديش يا رب العالمين. اللهم تقبل منا دعاءنا. اللهم في كل مكان يظلم فيه عبد فكن معه ولا تكن عليه، اللهم كن مع المظلومين، اللهم عليك بالظلمة أجمعين، اللهم زلزل الأرض من تحت أقدامهم وكن عليهم يا الله إنهم لا يعجزونك. اللهم أرنا يوما بالظلمة، اللهم أرنا يوما ببشار الأسد وأزلامه وأعوانه وكل مجرم وقف معه يا رب العالمين، يا قوي يا عزيز، يا قوي يا عزيز. اللهم أرنا فيهم يوما وكيوم فرعون وكيوم كل ظالم قبله يا الله. اللهم أثلج صدورنا واشف صدورنا وصدور قوم مؤمنين بنصر مؤزر لإخواننا في سوريا. اللهم أنا نخص إخواننا في سوريا بالدعاء لأن أزمتهم وآلامهم قد طالت وآلامنا معهم قد طالت. اللهم تقبل منا دعاء، اللهم اجعل هذه الساعة ساعة إجابة، فتقبل منا دعاءنا يا أرحم الراحمين ويا مجيب الدعاء. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم واشكروه على نعمه يزدكم وأقم الصلاة.